What's up, everybody? My name is Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to The Right Mindset. Today, we are going to go over basically the zero draft. Like, what is it? How do you use it? And give you a couple little doot tips. And basically, I'm going to talk about the zero draft. And for those authors out there, a little heads up. I'm going to give you a quick peek into what a zero draft is. Then I'm going to go over how I personally use zero drafts to help me get ideas out quickly. And especially if any idea pops up in my head and I want to keep it, but I have other projects I'm currently working on with a deadline. I'm sure that happens to you often as a writer. You're in a chapter, and then you're like, wait, I have this other idea. Or a character comes up and you're like, this is a great character. And you're like, what can I do with it? Oh, I have this big story. And it's like, well, zero drafts are a really great way to kind of like, I have this idea. Let me give it a little energy, but not take away from my main project. We're going to go over that today. So here we go. All right, let's get into it. And, I do want to say that I always do this at the top of the show because you, the audience, are so important. So a big thank you to everyone who supports the channel, those that come on for the premieres of each channel. And I'm always there. I'm always chatting. I'm always ready to give some answers to questions you have in real time. This channel is really here for the community. It gives me a chance to, give back as best I can to the people that have inspired me, and also to give back to the community that has inspired me to basically do what I do and live the life I live and be a writer as I am. So if you're new here, as it says on my page, if you're new here, a beginner writer or an advanced author or a screenwriter, give that subscribe button a click and follow along on lessons about our craft, analyzing, reviewing storytelling, and interviews with fellow writers as we celebrate the industry and talk shop together. You gotta really find your passion, find your love, and this channel is really I kind of created it to help understand the right mindset, the mindset of a writer, and because there's how do you be successful in the industry, and then there's like, how do I really perfect my craft? And that's what this channel is dedicated to, the craft with a little bit of business savvy, a little bit of business savvy. So as it says, today's lessons is about zero draft, but more importantly, what is a zero draft? I got some notes here. I'm going to read through them as I always do, and then I kind of talk about it, and I loosely riff on it. Okay. So you may have already done some research on what a zero draft is and want a second, third, or maybe even maybe I'm your 20th opinion. I don't know. But you might have seen that a zero draft is basically when you write a rough draft, usually no longer than 10 to 15 pages of your novel idea. No pun intended. Let me throw that out there. In this particular zero draft, you write to focus on the meat of the story and not the finer details that would go into a full story. In a nutshell, a zero draft is the draft you use to work out ideas before either outlining the story or jumping to the page to allow the pantser in you to begin. Zero draft is basically a pantser's dream anyway, since you're kind of just working off a train of thought, right? So they get to you basically, when you do a zero draft, you get to write what you want and see where it goes, work out character ideas, etc. The best way to use a zero draft, in my opinion, is as an extension to brainstorming. So if you haven't watched the brainstorming lesson that I have, and like what the value of brainstorming is, this is just another example of using brainstorming to benefit working out ideas. So zero draft is just another tool for brainstorming, in my opinion, and less about actually writing a full novel. It's about the brainstorming, not necessarily about, hey, let's write the whole novel right now. Basically, whatever you have to sneeze. Gesundheit. Thank you. Um, basically, this is more about brainstorming than actually writing a full album, but also it's so when you only have an idea or a seed of ideas and you sort of want to see where it goes, a zero draft is really what it is. That's Have you ever just wrote down, it'd be really great if blank 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 knew blank blank blank, and I don't know, she was in Scotland and she traveled through rocks, and now she's in ye old Scotland in the 1700s and she meets another man, and then that turns into Outlander. It's an idea that ends up being what it is. A zero draft is a way of working out the story through long form brainstorming. Okay, so I just kind of want to riff on that for a second. A zero draft is ultimately, even if you don't even realize you're using it, it's the first thoughts you have on a story idea, and then as you start jotting it down, it really onto page. Even if you're going for the full pantser experience to write your story, you're ultimately writing a zero draft because you're trying to discover the story, the characters, the ideas, their personalities, the plots, the subplots. And you might realize, 3, 4, maybe even 5 chapters in, you're like, wait a minute, I think I understand this story now. And you start over. And that ultimately would be your zero draft. But knowing what a zero draft is gives you a chance to hone the tool of a zero draft and really isolate the effort to take action. So instead of just realizing instead of just kind of like unconsciously in your zero draft, you go, oh, wait, I have this idea. I really don't know where I want to go, but I don't want to write a full story. So let me do a zero draft. Let me purposefully write 10 or 15 pages and kind of see if the idea has any weight, any purpose, So this brings us to what is the benefit of a zero draft. And, for discovery writers, this is probably your first draft, as I said. And for those who want to use a zero draft or even try it out, really, this is why it could benefit you, okay? Since a zero draft is sloppy at best and not meant to be an organized novel, say from an outline or even bullet points, right? Because even if you're a pantser, you need to know your big beats. You need to know where it's going. In Kill Bill, like I said, you need to know in the past videos, you got to know that Bill dies. So how does he die, right? So at least we know he's going to die. Use a zero draft to work through your story by basically writing out a paragraph about what you'd like the story to be. After that paragraph, jot down another paragraph of how you would like to see the story begin. Each paragraph thereafter could be there to explain the following chapters. What I am getting at is the benefit of zero draft before you even have an outline gives you a chance to find the story. Allow your paragraphs to lead you to where you want to go, but you're also limiting yourself in a good way. You're saying, wait, how do I say the most information with the least amount of words and get right to the meat, right into the important part? Because you're not using the zero draft to write in great detail, or even it's not even to organize your thoughts. Basically, you want to allow the chaos of the creative process to flow from you, and what's great is if a paragraph doesn't feel right for you, you can start that one over, or if you really have to add a second paragraph. But by creating those limitations, the benefit of a zero draft is allowing you to say, wait, what is this story? What is this motivation? What is this plot? What is this subplot? What is this character's emotions? Where are they from? What do I really want to say in that first chapter and second chapter? What is this story in a nutshell? How can I represent the story I want to tell in one paragraph? And you might not even get it right. You might write that first paragraph going, oh, this sounds pretty good. But as you work through it, you'll discover there's more to it. And then you could refine that first paragraph that's supposed to explain your story. And it's just a process, because as you go down and you're developing each paragraph and you're going, all right, this chapter would be great like this character's like this, blah, blah, blah. You're finding the story and making sense of it. And then you could go back to the top and then reread once you go through it and you feel basically with train of thought, you go until you stop. The whole point of even using a zero draft and the benefits of the zero draft is absolutely, without a doubt, a chance for you to kind of focus your thought into molding the plot points, the subplots, character beats, and the good news is you never have to really worry about deep conversational dialogue. Dialogue I would leave for the outline. You can add some dialogue to this. It's a zero draft. Do whatever you want. But the purpose of a zero draft, to get the most out of it, the benefit, is to really be describing what it is the story is to you and what you want to kind of feel and see, and not necessarily working out the scenes. Dialogue helps scenes, like develop scenes. But obviously you could do whatever you want. You could draw in your, zero draft. It doesn't matter. But the point is, this is to really write out your ideas through a train of thought and not necessarily seeing where a scene goes, because if you take those paragraphs of each chapter or each character, it's really a broad stroke look at that through line or that thread, And so let's go. How I use a zero draft. So basically, I like to use a zero draft when working on television series, Bibles for a season, and the connected seasons. However, my process works just as well for my novels. What I'll do is I'll write out 5 paragraphs about the story idea before I really get into my zero draft jump. I consider this a 5-paragraph splash, and I'll allow these 5 paragraphs to take me wherever it goes and where I feel comfortable to allow it to go. Paragraph 1, for me personally, is about the main plot and character or characters for the main plot. Paragraph 2 is the world they live in and how it's important to the story. So let me just jump on those real quick. The main plot and the characters, I'll keep this paragraph to really explain what is the overall point of the book. Point A to point B. What is the inciting incident is going to create this main plot, and how do I want to see it resolve, things like that. So again, if the story was Kill Bill, I want to see Bill killed. Who's the main character? It'll be I think Beatrice is the name of the Uma Thurman's character, and what she's going to train and become better with a sword. Oh, that's interesting. And she goes around, she starts attacking the people that were in her gang to get closer to Bill and to avenge her situation. What is she avenging? Oh, she was almost killed because she went to get married. And that would all kind of be in that first paragraph. The second paragraph would be about the world. So what is the world? Maybe for Kill Bill, it would be I wanted to have that old style feel to it, like the old kung fu movies, and I want to embellish some of that, and I want to make it over surreal. By the way, even in a novel, you could say that, like, how am I going to describe these moments? I'm gonna make it seem super surreal and enhance everything, like over embellish stuff. So that might be in my second paragraph. Paragraph 3 gives me a chance to think about how it will begin. So basically what I have in the first paragraph of, like, where does it start, I'll focus this on literally the first moment or chapter, or even the ordinary world. What is the ordinary world and how will it start? That'll be paragraph 3. Paragraph 4 is all about the middle of the story. What would a climax look like for me? I forget. Oh, in Kill Bill, the climax is she goes after Lucy Liu. So in a novel, that would be because it's part 1, part 2. So, but it's one complete story. So Lucy Liu would be the climax. She had to fight all those people that I think it's the 99 Soul Warriors or whatever. Obviously, correct me in the comments so people know the actual information. But she wins that, and the story takes a whole new precedence, and now it's going to be a little harder, right? And then finally, but not last and not least, paragraph 5 goes into what I think the ending should be, and ultimately, in paragraph 1, I should explain what the ending is going to be, but this is a focus on that ending, and I might explore it a little bit more. Now, once I have those 5 paragraphs down, I go through them and I think about it, brainstorm off the ideas, and clean up what I want. Do I like this story? Do I like the ending? Do I like where it begins? Do I like this character? Do I really like the main plot, etc.? I don't go too deep into it. I want to keep the edges soft for manipulation of the story. But I do want to make sure it's clear enough for me to play with and understand the story. And once I feel comfortable with where the story is here, in that basically splash effort, I start mapping out the 27 plot point headers. Then I write one paragraph for each of the 27 plots, because why not? You know what I'm saying? Why not? It's just that's just how I am. Because I love this 27 plots. So once I have those plots, then I basically write a paragraph for each plot point. Because the first plot is ordinary world, second plot point is the inciting incident, third plot point is the reaction to that inciting incident, the fourth plot is the long-term thought, repercussions of that, actual inciting incident. And then so I sit there and I make every paragraph basically what is it about that plot point that's interesting to me in a paragraph. And again, the clearer I can make it for a paragraph, the more I understand it and the more I can hone and focus the story in my zero draft, which means that once I start working on my outline, I know what the story is. So now I can manipulate it. I can work with it because I know it intimately. And once I get through all this, by the way, I go back and I do a second paragraph, a third, fourth, and yes, a fifth paragraph. Basically, for each plot point, I start off with one paragraph and I go through all 27. Then I'll go back and I'll do a second paragraph for all 27, and a third, a fourth, and a fifth. What I did was the first 5 paragraphs I do for the 27 plot points, like I said. And it allows me to build on the story itself. Also, I restrict my paragraphs to about 5 to 8 lines, depending on my mood, based on the format settings as well. And you could do whatever you want. Obviously, it's yours and your desire. So why do I do 5 paragraphs? I like to think of each plot point having like an arc, okay? And I'll use that first paragraph that I write as sort of like, what is this plot point? And then the second, third, fourth, and fifth, I'll kind of map it out. And what would it look like? What would it look like in the book or look like in the script? All right. If you have questions about that, I'd love to, I'm always here to answer those. Trust me. So final thoughts. Whatever technique you find and use for your zero draft is absolutely the right one to use. The only real thing that makes a zero draft is that you don't focus on writing your book yet. Once you start writing the book and mapping out specific details and adding dialogue, now you're writing a book. You're not really working on the zero draft. However, if you want to add dialogue and kind of work on your book and get to chapter 5, 10, whatever, 20, and you're like, you know what, I found the characters, I'm going to start over, that's also fine. It's technically your zero draft too, because you're discovering the characters. Is just a different version of the zero draft. This is just my version of how I do the zero draft based on what I've learned from others and what I've discovered in conversations with my fellow writers and authors. The whole point of a zero draft, though, is to focus on figuring out your story by writing smaller moments in that story, more detailed and more like, what is it like? How do I explain it? Even a character scene, even if that scene doesn't end up in the story, it's good to sort of use this zero draft to say, who is this character? And maybe something is worked out in the zero draft, but you don't use it in your story, but it really tells you who your that character is. And then also let yourself have fun, explore different ways to even get that zero draft out. Find what works for you. Try this method. Try a different method. Maybe mix methods. Whatever it is, it's your creative journey. So, and I just want to say, the zero draft has always been something that I dreaded and feared, and I always jumped over. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to work out a story. But as I developed as a young writer, I found that it's not so much about research, where like I just spend like years just kind of understanding what is the story going to be about. I started being more physical with writing out my stories. So by using the zero draft or doing my brainstorming techniques, it allows me to discover my story. And then as I find moments that I don't understand, I'll do the research. I won't even go into extreme research. I'll go into enough research to understand it. And then when I get confused again, I'll have to research again. So I'm trying not to limit my discovery of the story. But if I am going to put something in the book that I don't understand, I need to at least understand this. So I'll do the research on that. Whereas in the past, I would just be like, let me just gather as much information as possible so I could really know blank, blank, blank. And I found myself not writing. And if you're a writer, you should be writing. Not that, well, the theory is writers write. So if you're not writing, you want to be a writer. It doesn't even matter if you're writing prose or a paragraph or in a journal. You're still a writer at that point. But if you're always thinking about writing, but you never write, it's basically did a tree fall in the woods if no one's heard it. Anyway, the next video in this series will be actually one of my favorite things in the world, which is seeding, or you may have heard of it as leaving breadcrumbs, otherwise known as foreshadowing. I like to call it seeding, and you'll learn why in the actual video for the next video in this series. So, obviously, time for my second favorite aspect of the conclusion. Have you benefited from working with other authors who are your friends? Let me in the community know in the comments below. And by the way, how did you benefit? Don't just yes or no that. How have you really benefited from working with other authors who are your friends? What did you get out of it? I'm just saying, whatever. And obviously, if you want to learn more about improving your craft, insight on the industry, and hearing from fellow authors, please subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out. And as always, because you know how we roll here, keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye.